Good morning, North 44 degrees. Let me throw this switch plate cover on and we'll call this project done. This is a piece of functional art, is what I've been referring to it as. This hallway gets really dark, and especially at night when I take the dog out for the last trip of the evening. We have the option of turning on these overhead lights, which is really overkill, or we can now turn on the shutter lights. Here's what we got. So let's go through and I'll show you what we did. The shutters hung up using a French cleat system. The French cleat you make by taking in this case, just a standard 1x4 and ripping it in half on an angle. And then you mount one side on the shutter and the other side on the wall. For this project, I wanted the top of the shutter to be even with the top of the door, or pretty close anyway. So measured from the bottom of the cleat to the top of the shutter, marked a spot on the wall roughly parallel to the top of the shutter, or to the top of the door, and then measured down so I knew where the bottom of the cleat would be. And it's close. It's within a 1/16 of an inch, and I don't think anybody's going to notice. If you do pay attention, you'll see I actually took the first measurement and mounted the wall piece of the cleat 180 degrees out, so that the grabby part was near the wall, not away from the wall. So I had to re-drill that and hang that back up correctly. Double checking the stud location to make sure I hit that. The shutter is not terribly heavy. It probably weighs 30-ish pounds. So if you don't have a stud available, a good heavy-duty anchor will do the same thing. But I just grabbed 2 studs. It just made that a little bit easier. Fewer holes to drill, and if the shutter ever comes down, it'll be fewer holes to patch. So if we decide to go a different direction. The little shrink wrap there was just for transport, just so the shutters didn't come open and get damaged. That is the original paint on those. Those were always a kind of a dark forest green, if you will. Once I got that done, then it was trying to figure out what to do about electricity. Wanted to make sure that the switch was the exact same height as the other switches in the house. So measured a switch on the laundry room, measured up from the ground, and then spent a good few minutes staring at the wall, trying to figure out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to place that switch in the wall. Back to the stud finder, making sure there's no more studs in that area, because I know there would be one next to the door, but that's not a load-bearing wall, so there's probably only one right there. And after you're done playing with the stud finder, go back to the tried and true method. You can tap on the wall and tell the difference between a stud and the hollowness behind the wall. Quick update on where we're at with the shutter. The shutter itself is up, so I put a French cleat in yesterday, and that's installed. The next thing we want to do is put some LED lights behind it. LED lights look something like this, and I've got 3 of them. We'll do one high, one medium, and one low, and this is just to give us some extra light in the hallway. These big overhead lights do a very good job of lighting everything up, but think of it as mood lighting. So the problem we're running into is the shutters are exactly opposite of the craft room and the guest room doors, and we wanted them, wanted the shutter kind of exactly in the middle. So without cheating too far, and I had to cheat it a little bit to the right because I wanted to make sure I had a stud. If we notice here on the inside of the laundry room, there's a light switch right here, which is about, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches from the door frame. So if you look around on this side, which is going to put it, I don't know if you can see those marks there on the wall, so that light switch is kind of right there, which means if we're going to put the light switch and steal power from the laundry room light switch to turn the lights on the shutters, we're going to jam that box really tight up against the door frame. It'll look something like this. Which, it's going to be hard to get a light switch cover on. So the other option we have is we can put the light switch over here. Better option, we have an outlet right here. We can take power from the inside of that, run it up the wall. We'll have to cut a hole. There's a stud in between the light switch and the outlet, so we'll have to cut a hole in the wall to get a wire through the stud. And then we can do that. I think that's the way we're going to end up going. Not ideal. I would have really preferred to have that light switch on the other side, but I think given that all the circumstances and the parameters we have to work with, I think that's going to be our best option. So let's cut some holes in these brand new walls. In order for me to get a wire from this outlet box up to where the switch is going to be, I have to go through this stud. So we had to open up a hole in the wall so we could drill a hole through the stud and pass a wire through it. Did not realize there's going to be wires here, not that big of a deal. If you'll notice, I cut those the hole there at an angle, and what that's going to allow me to do is when I go put this panel back in, that will all sit flush. I'll open up and I'll put a tape ring around it, and I can mud and everything will be nice and clean. You can see I've got the power off. So what I'm going to do next is take this outlet out of the wall and pass a wire down through the top of the box, which you might be able to see, probably not, right in there. I'll just slip a 14 gauge wire there. We'll drill a hole through this stud and then pass it up to this box. This box is a retrofit box. You can see the tabs here. When you put this in the wall, you start tightening this down, and these tabs hold it secure against the drywall. Super handy if you're doing remodeling work. And then we'll add another box up behind the shutters, so we have some place to plug in or pull power into the LED lights that are going to go behind the shutters. So let's get back to it. The intention was to go ahead and mud up the patch hole there, but the mud, my drywall mud, had gone bad, so we're going to continue on with this, getting this rest of this wired up, and we'll have to do the patch hole later. going to have 3 lights. All of them are LEDs. We mount them to the bottom of these boards. I just want to get these boards lined up in a suitable manner. Found this at an antique sale. We had this set of shutters we've had them for 20 years. They've been in the last 2 houses. The first one went in a stairwell. They had a great big tall ceiling on it, and we had it opened up and actually had a flower box in the opening with some silk flowers. It looked real nice. In the last place, I took the light out of the stairwell and put these LEDs in, and this was the light in the stairs going upstairs. Now they kind of got figured out where I wanted the switch to go. You can see the hole's been cut into the wall. I went ahead and mounted the boards that are going to hold the LED lights, and these are just screwed right into the drywall. There's really no weight to them. So there's little risk of them, being pulled out or damaging the wall in any way. So just a couple 1¼ inch screws right into the drywall. Fortunately, I had bagged up all this hardware when we took it off the wall, so I kind of had everything in one spot. You'll notice that on the top one, I only put 1 clamp. That's because at some point that clamp either fell out of my hand or fell out of the bag. It was later recovered at the old place. It has since been reinstalled at this one. So the upper light does have 2 clamps on it in the final product. Nothing fancy about the clamps. They're just little snaps, little snap 2 clamps. 1 tiny little screw, holds them up. There's no weight. It's not load bearing at all. I did pre-drill the holes in the bottom board. There's it's probably a 16th or maybe even a 32nd inch bit, just a tiny little bit, just enough to get that screw to start easily. Again, re-drilling the pilot holes just makes things easier. These LED lights are a little bit older. There's a lot better technology out there now. So these are actually kind of big for LED lights. You see here I'm marking, this is an old work box. So it's about half as deep as a traditional box, and I went with that one because I knew there would be no kind of switch. I just needed some place to put the wire connections. So this is kind of 2-code. You see, I marked the spot where I wanted to cut, and just seconds before I started cutting, I thought, hey, we should check and see if there's a stud hanging out behind there. And sure enough, right about the middle of where that box was, there was a stud. So I moved it over a little bit, so I didn't have to go through 2 different studs and created just a gigantic mess. The advantage of using a razor blade to cut sheetrock like that is it just creates a lot less dust. When you break out that drywall saw, it's a bit of a messy endeavor. So sometimes I'll just use the saw or the razor blade. In this one, it just quite didn't get it done, so I did have to grab the saw for just a little bit. If that little piece had fallen down in the hole, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. If we ever have to replace these, I'll just create patches out of a piece of 1/2-inch sheetrock. It's one of the nice things about a modular home. It does use all the common building materials that you find at the big box store. So there's no special materials here. This is just standard 1/2-inch sheetrock. The only thing holding that old work box in is 2 1-inch screws, so just 2 little utility screws. Nothing fancy. Again, no loads being put on them, so you don't need a whole bunch. You can see there I'm just prepping the wires for the switch, cutting all the insulation off, stripping down the ends. This is just a standard rocker switch that's going to control these lights. What I'm adding there is a strain relief, and these are newer. I've not used these a whole bunch, but it's just a little piece of plastic that pops in the hole. That's in the front of the cover that's going to go on that plate. So the older style is a metal. It had to be screwed on and protruded, a good 1/2 inch from the faceplate, but these new ones are super shallow. And you'll see here in a second, they're actually quite effective. As I slipped this one on a little too far and had to struggle with it for a minute to get it to move down the wire. Early on in this video I did some time lapse, and I've also done a bunch of the video where I'm just fast forwarding it. If you would, tell me down in the comments which you prefer. Do you prefer the time lapse style, or do you prefer the sped up video? There's advantages and disadvantages to both. Just so we're clear, I am not an electrician, nor have I ever been an electrician. But I have done this a bunch before, so I'm comfortable with doing it. If you're not comfortable with electrical, then I suggest and strongly recommend that you hire an electrician to do this part for you. It's not difficult. If you or someone you know would like to become an electrician, you should check out Mike Rowe's website. Mike Rowe Works. I'm not associated with Mike. Mike doesn't know who I am, probably never will. I just like some of the work he does. He has a scholarship program that you can learn how to become an electrician. So if that's something that interests you, check it out. Got all that out of the way. Just hooking up the switch. I'm not going to go through exactly where the wires go. I'll let you look that up on your own. Like I said, I'm not an electrician, so I'll leave it to you. But it's pretty straightforward. Adding a switch here and there is probably some of the easier work that you'll do. Now they got the switch in, connecting the lights up there, that's just 2 wire nuts, and the ground wire. So there'll be 3 connections up there. Like I said, don't need a lot of room, so we went with the shallow depth box. I did at a later point go in and clean up that wire, all the wiring, so all that's nice and neat and clean and organized. But did not show that in the video. There's that. I'll clean up the wires and we'll check it out again this evening when it gets dark. I do have a bigger light that we can put on the bottom. I wonder how that would look. Well, that'll do for now. I'll go off camera and get all the final details put together, tighten up those wires, get a second clip in, and like I said, we'll look at it tonight when the sun goes down and see if we like the big light on the bottom or if we're going to go back to the small one. The idea here is just to have some light down at this dark end of the hallway. There's not a lot of natural light out here, so this hallway gets pretty pitch dark. So that'll wrap it up. Tighten up, clean up. I'll be back when I get a bucket of mud. Here's what the hallway looks like at night. Here's what the hallway looks like with the overhead lights on. Pretty obnoxious. So let's go down and turn on the new lights. Here's what the hallway looks like. I like this a lot. Get that wall finished up and we'll be good to go. You'll notice here I've stripped away the paper off the drywall around where the tape is going to go in that channel. And that's so that all the tape and the mud and everything can be lower than the surrounding paint. That just helps give you a nice clean finished look. If you walked by and didn't know something would happen down there, you'd never really notice, because the patch does not protrude out from the wall at all. And leaving that little bit of paint there in the center again gives you that little level of where the mud should come through. When doing mud, lots of little coats, lots of thin coats is better than great big thick coats. So I think I only show one coat of mud going on here, but there is actually, I think I ended up doing 3. And I actually fuss with this quite a bit. I could have quit messing with this 2 or 3 minutes earlier and just let it dry. Got the paint. I don't do this all the time, but I did see it once, and it does make sense. These are pulling the lint off the roller before you start painting. but these are pretty good. So, not much there. Alright, what I didn't show was I've added 2 additional layers of mud to this wall. So you can see it's kind of got a nice, good solid coat on it. So let's protect the outlet a little bit. Sand this down and do a touch-up. A good way to check and make sure you've got your mud correct is by shining a light from an angle and seeing if there are any shadows. And if there are no shadows, then you know you've got it pretty well, and most people won't be able to detect it. Looks like I've got a little spot right there. Everything else looks pretty good. In case you're wondering, the vacuum cleaner that I have here is my work construction remodeling vacuum cleaner. This is not my wife's good vacuum cleaner. It does have a HEPA filter that filters out all that dust, so we're not pumping dust back into the rest of the house, but and we take it in and get it serviced regularly to keep the filters clean. But I don't use her good vacuum cleaner when I'm doing these kinds of projects, just because I don't want to, tear her good machine up. Got the paint. I don't do this all the time, but I did see it once, and it does make sense. These are pulling the lint off the roller before you start painting, but these are pretty good. So, not much there. show you the result. I'm gonna call the project done. Good morning, North 44 degrees. Let me throw this switch plate cover on and we'll call this project done.